meeting to order, please. I would need a motion and a second to adopt tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. That motion carries. Public hearing, quasi-judicial hearing, special use permit for solar farm, South Davidson Solar, LLC, Cypress Creek, Renewables. 0704200000024. And with that, we'll now open the meeting. Quasi-judicial hearing, May the 20th, 2025, South Davidson Solar, LLC. Today is May the 20th, 2025. My name is Larry Ward, and I'm the mayor for the town of Denton. I'll ask that each member of the board state their name for the record. Start right there.
My name is Steve.
Dean Pruitt.
Scott Morris.
And Porter Dean.
This meeting is a continuation of the March 18, 2025 Board of Commissioners quasi-judicial hearing for a special use permit request from South Davidson Solar, LLC. The board determined standing at the March 18, 2025 meeting. The following people were deemed to have standing: Karen Disco, 7348 Farm Denton Road; Valerie Adams, 297 Forest Park Drive; Dana Evans, 572 Bombay Road; Eddie Hupel, 254 Forest Park Drive; Jeffrey Russell, 195 Bingham Industrial Park. Angel Jenkins, our town manager and zoning officer, is serving as staff to the board today. Misty Whitman, town attorney, will be advising the board on legal and procedural questions. Prior to resuming the hearing, is there anyone in attendance that wishes to have standing determined at this time? If you would like to speak tonight and you have standing basically means if your property adjoins the said solar farm, if you think you're going to suffer some kind of financial situation, then you would probably be standing, or you're an expert in what you're talking about. So if you would like to speak tonight, and we can get you in standing now. Does anyone like to speak? Okay. Can you come forward at this time?
I'm Archie Bales, on the property on the corner of Clockman Mill and 109.
Well, we would like to determine if you're in standing first. County Attorney, can you handle that?
Yes, so, Mr.
I'm kind of hard of hearing you.
Tell me your name again.
Archie Ronald Bales.
Archie Bales. Mr. Bales, tell me, does your property adjoin the property that is, the subject of tonight's meeting?
It's surrounded by all of it.
So it does, it's surrounded by, so it actually touches
Yes.
it. Okay, and, do you think that your property may be negatively impacted?
I definitely do.
Okay, so we'll need a board determination as to whether or not he does have standing. We'll need to vote on that. I'll make a motion that, or, what's your name?
Archie Ronald Bales.
Bale.
Like Bales, B-A-L-E-S.
There's a second. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye. That motion carries. Okay,
Can you do a roll call on that, so we know negative or not?
I'm sorry.
Can you do a roll call for the board, so we know who was in agreement, who was not?
Okay.
I was in there.
Green.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unanimous.
I'd have my opinion on the impact it's gonna have to Denton and my property.
Mr. Bales, we'll call you back
Yeah,
up.
we'll call you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. General introduction to the quasi-judicial decision. We now open the evidentiary hearing for South Davidson Solar LLC, case number 2024-029. The applicant has requested a special use permit for the property located at 835 Plotman Mill Road in Denton city limits. The decision will be made by a simple majority vote by the board. This hearing is a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. That means it is like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decision. These rules are different from other types of land use decisions like rezoning cases. The board's discretion is limited. The board must base its decision upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. A quasi-judicial decision is not a popularity contest. It is a decision constrained by the standards in the ordinance and based on the facts presented. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts, the standards, not personal preference or opinion. Participation is limited. This meeting is open to the public. Everyone is welcome to watch. Parties withstanding have rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Parties are limited to the applicant, the local government, and individuals who can show they will suffer special damages. Other individuals may serve as witnesses when called by the board. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not opinions. For certain topics, this board needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts on increased traffic. Individuals providing expert opinion must be qualified as experts and provide factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. At this time, we will administer the oath for all individuals who intend to provide witness testimony.
Anyone that was sworn last time is still under oath, and it still holds at this point. Anyone who is new, Mr. Bales, will need to come and be sworn in. Your left hand on, raise your right. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Do, so help me God.
Thank you.
Ex parte communication. Parties to this case have rights for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication. Does any board member have any conversations or communications to disclose at this time?
None other than I say last time, I have had people mention it to me, just reply that I can't comment on it.
So,
Based on the disclosures we've heard from the board concerning partiality and ex parte communications, does any member of the board or any party to this matter have an objection to a board member's participation in this hearing? Any objection? Anyone? Okay, very good. Mrs. Jenkins will introduce this hearing. Before you start, please confirm that you were sworn in at the start of the hearing. If not, we'll administer the oath now.
merger on January the 22nd. Letters were mailed to adjacent property owners on the 22nd of January and also posted on the property on January the 24th. The Town of Denton Board of Adjustment reviewed and approved the 4 standings with conditions on January the 16th, 2025. The condition was that plantings must be of minimal of 6 feet in height at the time of installation to provide a more immediate and effective vegetation buffer. In accordance with the Town of Denton zoning ordinance, there are certain requirements that need to be met for the permit to be approved. This is in line with our comprehensive land development plan, which by definition for this property is zone light industrial. And the definition of that is that this district is established for light industrial and related uses which can be operated in a relatively clean and quiet manner, and which are not, which are not obnoxious to the adjacent residents or business district establishments. The solar farm can operate in a relatively clean and quiet manner and would not be obnoxious to adjacent residents or property or business establishments. And due to the type of hearing that we're having, quasi-judicial nature, all specific and general standards have to be met solely on the information obtained in the application and then through tonight's testimony. Staff feels that the applicant request is reasonable and consistent with the Town of Denton zoning ordinance and would recommend approval of special use permit request.
Staff to summarize and request state the applicable standards from site notice provided. State what materials were provided to the board in advance and summarize content of any staff analysis. In appeals of staff decisions, the staff person acts as a party to the case rather than in the typical role of staff to the board.
If you would like, we did provide printouts to you at our last meeting as we were going to hold it in February. So the board was presented with information from South Davidson Solar. You have information from Kirkland Appraisals and also Chris Sandiford. I'm so sorry. The information was provided to you at the last meeting for your review. You also have copies of the information that was provided through the public hearing request. The 4 standards that are mentioned, I will read those for you. The first one is that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted and approved. Second is the use meets all required conditions and specifications. 3 is the use will not substantially injure the value of the adjourning or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. The location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is located and in general conformity of the plan of development of the Town of Denton and its environments. And it is in line with your light industrial as it is currently zoned. Okay.
Thank you. Additional language regarding standing limited witnesses, qualifying experts, and verifying documents are provided below under script for particular situations of witnesses and documentary evidence. The applicant, South Davidson Solar LLC, will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and arguments must focus upon the applicable standards. Before you begin, please state your name for the record, address, and relation to the case. Please confirm that you were sworn in at the start of the hearing. If not, our attorney will administer the oath.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. My name is Ben Hinsey. I'm an attorney representing the applicant, South Davidson Solar My address is 400 Bellevue Street, Greensboro, North Carolina. This is my 5th trip to Denton for one of these hearings. I did the planning board twice, and this is my 3rd time before y'all. It is my sincere hope that this time we'll move forward and reach a decision on the merits. South Davidson Solar LLC has submitted a special use permit application for a solar project they intend to build here. We've got a number of expert witnesses here to testify. You'll hear from all of them in turn. Harrison Cole with the applicant is here. He's an expert in and will testify to the specific use, whether it meets all the required conditions and specifications of the permit, as well as various questions about the plan as submitted and how it will be in harmony with the area. We'll hear from Nick Kirkland, who's a certified general appraiser. He'll speak to the fact that the use will not materially endanger the public, he'll speak to the fact that the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. You'll also hear from Chris Sandifer, who's an engineer. He will speak to the fact that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if it is anywhere proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted and approved. I'd like to note that the piece of this project that's up for discussion and approval today is a small piece of a larger solar project. Most of it is located in the county proper, not the town, but in the city limits. That has already been approved and permitted. So to say that otherwise, there's already a large solar project that has been approved, and this is a small additional part that we're seeking your approval for. There are a lot of much less pleasant uses that can be included in this zoning district. But to reiterate, there are 4 findings of fact that you'll hear about today. You'll hear substantial, competent, and material evidence from the applicant speaking to the fact that 1, the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted and approved. 2, you'll hear that the use meets all required conditions and specifications of the permit. 3, you'll hear that the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property and that the use is a public necessity. And 4, you'll hear the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of the town and its environs. I would also note that under North Carolina law, the fact that the ordinance includes a particular use as a special use establishes what's called a rebuttable presumption that that use is compatible with the surrounding area. So oftentimes that factor, that fact, is essentially, as a matter of law, checked off. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Harrison Cole, who will get us going. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Harrison Cole. My address is 45 Banks Avenue, Asheville, North Carolina, 28801, and I have been sworn in previously. Great, so I just want to start out with thank you again for having us here. And Michael, for the next one. Sorry, I couldn't get the little remote to work, so we've kind of got to do it this way. So I'm going to skip over these really quickly, but this is Cypress Creek in North Carolina. As you have heard previously, I believe that we are, I'm located in Asheville, like I said. My colleague Michael and other folks are located in our Adjournment office, which is our flagship office. We have over 140 employees in North Carolina, and we've also developed a large number of projects similar to this in North Carolina as well. So again, the purpose of today's meeting is to seek approval for this special use permit to add on to the existing land for South Davidson Solar LLC. The reason for this expansion is 1, we had interested landowners. 2, this we thought would be a helpful for the town as it increases the tax base about $1 million over the 40-year lifespan of the project. And another reason why, and probably more specifically to this, is in the land that we were using for the county, we found more wetlands than we anticipated. And because of that, we don't, we tend to, what we try and do is minimize all impacts to all wetlands and streams. And so because of that, we didn't want to have to bulldoze or fill any wetlands, and so this is why we reached out to another landowner, and we got the interest that way. And also this improves the efficiency of the project. So it's able to produce more electricity, put on the grid, because we have a little bit more space as well. And so I'm just gonna skip over this real quick. So these are all the different kind of meetings we've had in Davidson County to allow folks to tell us, one, we've done, these planning board meetings, but also we've held a couple of different community engagement kind of meetings, one at the library, one here, and other events where we encourage folks to come out and ask us questions, because we understand that, this is a newer technology to them, and we want them to feel safe and comfortable about this and be able to ask us questions that they have that maybe they weren't able to find anywhere else. And so this is kind of the timeline that we did, and at the last meeting that we held, that was held here, we had a really productive meeting and actually had questions that were given to us, a list of 36 questions, which we thought were really fair. And we were able to go through all these with all the different neighbors, and I hope that we were able to answer all their questions. I do have enough copies for the board if you're interested in seeing these. So I'll give these to you. And so again, this just goes back to, we are, again, a North Carolina operating company. We want to make sure that the communities that we work in feel that we are being as transparent as possible, and that's what we strive to do. So we try and do all these meetings as much as we can and help to address any questions and concerns that folks have. So here are the project details. Again, you all should be pretty familiar with this. So we know the location off of Clotman Mill Road to the east of the town. We talked to the mayor mentioned the parcel earlier, and as mentioned, this is currently zoned for light industrial. As mentioned, there are other uses which would have a considerable impact. That would include auto wreck shops. You heard of the other uses for this light industrial. So the current land use right now does have a factory, a recycling center on it. As you all know, this parcel of land has had numerous different facilities in it over its time. It's been a different factory, Burlington Textile Factory at one point. There's been a lot of different kind of heavy uses, heavy industrial uses, which is why this parcel is zoned light industrial. So here's our site plan. This is again for the full site, the area that's kind of shaded in red. This is the area for the town of Denton, just to make sure that everyone has a full view of it. Great, and so because of these meetings that we had held with the community, we got some feedback. And one of the things I wanted to mention is, it's kind of hard to see here, but in the red square in the northwest corner of the project area, we had some neighbors tell us that, hey, there's some old trees here, we'd like to keep that as is, so that'll help with the view shed. We said, great, that's what we'd love to hear, that's the feedback we want to hear. And so as a condition for this project, we're willing to enter into to take this area out and make sure that it is in the condition of the permit, so that we have to make sure that we follow it. We also, so that's again the setbacks, vegetative buffer we already talked about as a condition at the Board of Adjustment, this planting at 6 foot height. We're completely fine with that, and we're good to proceed with that. Another concern we heard is about wildlife. How do the animals and whatnot get through the property when you have a fence? And so what we're proposing here is a wildlife corridor that kind of goes to the west of the factory land and provides it's actually where a stream is, and so that's where wildlife tends to focus, and so they will be able to go through that area. It'll be fencing on both sides, so that it will be able to cross through the property. We're doing this, it costs more for us to do this, but this is again a commitment to what we're trying to do with the communities and make sure that their questions are heard and we're able to give answers to those. So again, here's the landscape plan. So the town of Denton and Davidson County have different ones. So the landscape along the town of Denton property, again, will be planted at 6 foot height, and then the Davidson County one will be slightly different. But again, our aim is to make sure that the view shed of this project is minimal. We can never guarantee that it will never be seen, but what we try and do is minimize the visual impact the best that we can. So here's a little bit more of the buffer detail for this, the town of Denton buffer. So again, this would be looking at 6 foot planting. So if you are at street level, you are hopefully not going to be able to see it. Again, we can't promise that, but we're going to do our best to ensure that that's the case. An environmental consideration, so I kind of touched on this earlier. You know, what we do is we define these environmental impacts, we comply with them, and then we protect them. And so we have these different environmental reports that we've done for the project, and we have an environmental expert here that can answer any questions that you do have. If there's any specific things, his consulting firm is the one that performed all these, and so he'll be able to go into these in a little bit more detail. But again, our number one aspect of environmental is avoidance. You know, if we can avoid it, that's the best thing we can do. And then the second, after that, if we can't avoid it for any reason, we mitigate it. So for this project, we're avoiding the wetlands. Any kind of wetland that we would be impacting would just be for a crossing. So it's essentially, we would build a culvert under it and then be able to cross over similar to a road. Again, if you have any questions for the environmental expert, he is available. So here's the kind of what we put together for the economic benefits of the town. So we had an updated report done, impact report done for the town of Denton. So again, over 40 years, you'd see about $1 million of additional tax revenue from this project. I believe the status quo of the project remained as is was close to, it was less than $20,000 over those 40 years. And so it's a very big impact, and hopefully one that, you know, the town can use to, you know, in their budget process and things of that nature. Again, you know, we have construction jobs. You know, one thing we do recognize is that solar doesn't provide a lot of long-term jobs. You know, for this project and others, for a project of this size, we're estimating between, you know, probably a handful of permanent jobs. You know, it's nothing like having a factory. We recognize that. And so that's the one unfortunate part about this project. The one unique thing about this, which I find interesting, at least for myself, is that the transmission line that we'd be connecting this project to is actually has been offline by Duke Energy for a number of years. And so this project would actually bring it back online. And as such, you know, if the recycling center went away and a new factory wanted to come in, they will have available power available to them on that parcel. And that is the funding from that comes directly from us. We have to pay Duke Energy directly, and they go out and perform the engineering and construction work for that job, for that line to be upgraded. Great. And so again, just to reiterate the relevant factors for the special use permit, the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted and approved. So again, we've provided this health and safety report in the application, that it will not materially endanger the public health or safety. And we do have an expert witness, Chris Sandifer, who will also be able to testify to that and answer any questions. The second, the use meets all required conditions and specifications of the permit. Again, this use meets all requirements laid out by the town of Denton Solar Ordinance as submitted and was approved by Denton's Planning Board or Board of Adjustment. And as the staff report shows, we meet all the ordinance requirements for that. The third, the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting properties, or the use is necessity, or the use is a public necessity. So again, we provided this appraisal report by Mr. Kirkland, who again here can testify to his report, and will also be available to answer any questions. But because of that, we believe, or we know that the value of the adjoining or abutting property, where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted, will not injure adjacent property values. This project has also received its CPCN, or its Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, from the North Carolina Utilities Commission, showing that it is a public necessity. And then finally, the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development for the town and its environs. As Angel mentioned, this proposed use meets the town's future land use plans. This parcel is also, again, zoned by industrial, and this is a allowable use underneath the permitted uses table, just requiring a special permit. So we believe that it does meet this qualification as well. So with that, I'm done, and I will pass it over to Mr. Sandifer.
Any questions for Harrison?
Harrison, how many in the state have y'all completed? And how many have started?
We go into that first slide.
I've seen a lot of docs about how many have completed.
Completed? Yeah, we have over 250 completed North Carolina.
Completed.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And we've done probably over a handful of the projects of this size in North Carolina as well.
And the counties are approved. How many acres is out here that they approved?
Yeah, if we go one or two slides down. So the original land is the 447 acres, excuse me.
And on your taxes, either I'm wrong, or if what you gave us last time, looks like $550,000.
Yes, we had an updated impact report that we're happy to share with y'all.
Okay.
Because we're on, that initial, you put it down, that's good. That initial report was done a couple of years ago, so we wanted to see it in today's dollars. So we reran that, and we have copies enough for y'all to see as well.
I do have one thing, and I might have just misunderstood or not, or right. The buffer.
Yes, ma'am.
Is 6 feet height.
At planting, that's a condition, yes.
What is the difference for the county? Did you say it was different? Is it?
It's slightly different, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's what I wanna know, the
Okay.
difference between.
Sure. So the kind of vegetative planting is still the same. So it's a mix of evergreen and also the under kind of shrubs, I'll call them. The difference between Davidson County and Davidson County actually had their buffer requirements more robust, even without the condition of planting at 6 foot. So Davidson County, for example, is just it's 2 rows of evergreen trees kind of offset, and then those are planted along the perimeter. And for the areas that are in Davidson County, again, are kind of similar to our environmental impact. The best thing that we can do is keep the existing vegetation as long as it meets the ordinance requirements for Davidson County. That's our first plan. If it doesn't, then we have to supplement with the additional plantings.
Anyone else?
On the original, packet that you had, you discussed the amount of, dollars that are the ability to see
Yes,
because of employment and construction, and you mentioned the amount of, sales tax that we would get.
Mhm.
However, you also say that none of the items are being purchased here. And how can we guarantee that the people who are employed are Davidson County residents?
Yeah, so I may have misspoken if I said sales tax. The one good thing is that we are using, even this past week, we've been engaging with local contractors, Falling Oak Timber, and we're working with them. And so, that is a local company. I saw their truck when I drove in today. So they're local around here. So I apologize, I did not mean sales tax. It's more of the real estate, the property tax, and then the equipment tax as well. And you can see in this, in the updated one that you were just handed, there's a good table on the back couple sheets that has the per year analysis for the project, for the total town revenue, and then it shows the total at the very end, and then the cumulative effect over the lifetime of the project in the graph at the bottom as well.
So it's $1 million over 40 years.
Yes, sir. You can see that obviously broken out per year. Yep.
And how wide is the buffer?
For the town and Denton buffer,
Yeah.
let's see. The setback of the vegetative buffer, just to confirm.
You don't want that.
Okay. Yeah, so the setbacks from all property lines is 100 foot. For the vegetative buffer, if you want to go to that one. It's a 6 foot time of planting. Go one more. Can't tell. I believe it's between 15 and 20 foot wide, but whichever the town of Denton's ordinance requires, that is what our landscape architect designed here.
Thank you for sharing your questions with us, but, also see some of these answers.
Yeah, I apologize about that. Kind of hindsight, I kind of wish we, set it up a recording or something, but these questions we're glad they were brought to us. We were not expecting to have a list of these questions, but we're able to go through them live with the neighbors. That should
How do you control the vegetation within the confine there?
Yeah, so our Durham office is home to our operations and maintenance department, and so we will have typically local contractors come out, and it's just mechanical mowing within the fence. So that'll be all handled. Our O&M team handles all that inside the fence and outside the fence. And additionally, on all the gates and along the fence, we will have signs that say, Cypress Creek Renewables is the owners, this is the South Davidson Solar Project, and it'll have a number that goes to our 24/7, 365 control center. So if there is an issue with the buffer or things of that nature, or the grass underneath the panels is growing up too high, there's a number that you can call and get a live person any time of the day.
Okay, if the project is approved, 20 years from now, how will you remove it from the property?
Yeah, that's a great
Dig
question.
a big hole and bury it, or haul it on?
No, thankfully not. So the best way to describe it is essentially, the way that these are installed is it's essentially taking a big hammer and a big nail and installing the post that way. And essentially at the end of the lifespan of the project, it's the opposite. You come in with the same equipment, pull the equipment out, and then it's either sent to a landfill or to a recycling center. We expect in 20 years, and I am speculating here, but in 20 years, the recycling industry for these kind of projects is going to keep on growing. There's actually a new recycling center just in Rowan County in Salisbury that just opened up that takes the solar panels, recycles them, and separates the different components of the panel so it can be used for different uses. I will also mention, Mr. Sandiford will testify to this, but these solar panels are allowed to just be placed in a standard landfill. There's no toxic leaching or anything of that nature, but to address your question, it would essentially be the opposite of the construction. We will enter into a decommissioning bond, which is required by both the town, the state, and the county, which we're happy to comply with. We've done so before, and so before any construction starts or anything of that nature, that bond will be in place.
Is that decommissioning bond, is it as of today's dollars or in 30 years?
It is when we get the decommissioning estimate, we kind of look at today's dollars, but then we're also forecasting, 30, 40 years down the road. And so what it would be is, I can't remember the exact language, but whatever the ordinance requires, and then also we want to make sure, because DEQ also has similar requirements, and so whichever requirements kind of supersede or higher, then those are the ones we follow. So traditionally, it's about 125% of the estimated decommissioning cost. So there's a little bit of buffer in there as well, and it will be refreshed as well. I believe every 5 years. Every 5 years, yeah.
Any more questions for us? No, would you call your next witness, please?
Yes, I will call Chris Sandiford.
Got something earlier to read to you that for certain technical matters, this board needs opinion testimony from a qualified expert. Please state for the record your name, company, and address, and also state the topic that you will discuss and provide your professional qualifications and experience that qualify you as an expert.
I can do that, thank you. I have been sworn in.
You're right.
My name is Chris Sandiford. I have offices at 3118 Green Road, Spring Hope, North Carolina, which is in Nash County. I'm a graduate electrical engineer from Clemson University. I'm a professional engineer in the state of North Carolina and about 20 other states in U.S. Commonwealths. I am an electrical contractor in the state of North Carolina with unlimited classification. Serve on Nash County Planning Board. I have a lot of the qualifications, but if that's suitable, then I'm gonna stop there and I waste your time.
We're fine.
Okay, thank you.
What topic are you going to talk about?
The topic will be health and safety.
Okay.
Can touch on, I did do a decommission estimate for this project. It will be updated every 5 years. That's by statute, state statute. I did use present day. I don't try to forecast what material costs are going to be tomorrow, much less. When I call up, I use the website I use to get the pricing for steel and copper and aluminum, and that's what I use for salvage value. I do not use any types of values that would be purposeful for reuse. I just assume it's all going to be scrap.
Okay.
That's the way I do it, a very conservative way to do it. Probably some of this equipment could be used on the secondary market, it's worth more than what I consider, but you can't question the bottom line if that's all it is that I use it for scrap. But, I'm just gonna start, I know we're gonna have to cover a lot, so one of the first things they'll put in, and this is safety, is to put a security fence. And the site will be surrounded by a security fence that is required by the National Electric Code. The next thing that we'll be doing is putting piles in the ground. They're steel, I-beam type of structures. Sometimes they're channel and they're covered with galvanized zinc so that they don't rust. And so they press those into the ground. On top of those, they will put a rack or bracket that's horizontal that connects these piles together that are driven in the ground. And they'll put 2 rows of those and they'll start placing the panels on those. Those panels are on a rack that rotates. They're single axis tracking. They have a small little DC motor that's got its own little panel that is used to track the sunlight. So these panels will face the east in the morning and they'll face the west in the evening. The output of these panels is fed into some harnesses that are fixed up under the bottom of the panel that feed an inverter. There'll be one inverter in the town's jurisdiction, and that inverter is going to sit on a concrete pad. It's about 15 by 12, 4 inches of concrete, and the DC conductors feed into that inverter. That inverter converts it from the DC current from the panels into AC, which is what we have serving this room right here. They go from there to a transformer that transforms to what is called a collection voltage, which would be like 25 kV, 35 kV, something like that. Just a distribution level voltage to collect all this energy, and it will carry it over to a new substation that's going to be connected to that existing line near where the existing substation is. There'll be a switch that Duke puts in. We won't have anything to do with that, but we will have a substation which will have its own fence. It will be a taller fence. It will be in accordance with the National Electric Safety Code. But that is for security for that. There will be no storage, so we're not looking for any type of batteries or anything like that. I just want to cover a couple of issues that after construction, there will be no sound at the boundary of the project. These things have, the inverters have a fan on them that is used to cool the electrical components to keep them at a temperature that they can operate. And that fan, if you're 20 feet from it, you can hear it. It's very similar to, it's not as loud as air conditioning, but it's louder than a refrigerator. It's about 72 dB. I don't know if that probably doesn't mean anything. I'm trying to explain it to you in a way that but at the boundary, you won't hear it because the fans, the inverters are going to be located on the internal portions of the site. You don't put them on the edge because it's just too expensive to construction method. You put them in the middle so you keep all your little runs to the inverter as short as possible to save on construction expense. By the fact that these panels track the sun, the incident angle to the sun is probably close to like a little less than 2 degrees, but anything less than 5 degrees, there will be no glare. As long as the incident angle, as long as you're tracking the sun, you see glare when something, and you have to look across it, and you're looking at the sun, it's coming at an angle, shallow angle, and you can see glare like that. But when it tracks the sun, there will be no glare. Talk about electromagnetic fields for just a second. All electricity has electromagnetic fields. This microphone carrying my voice back there, these lights all have electromagnetic fields, which are stronger than what you'll get from a solar panel. It's about 10% of of what the electromagnetic field, about 10% of what the native background electromagnetic field of the earth is that causes a compass to point north. That's an electromagnetic, that electromagnetic field protects us from the sun's radiation, and it's a very, very valuable thing. So, but this I've measured it, and it's about 10% of what the background EMF is. We talked about decommissioning. I don't mention anything unless you have questions about that. We did talk about safety panels. There's nothing in these panels that can leach out. There's nothing that's going to contaminate the ground. We've gone through floods, fires, tornadoes, hurricanes. We've gone through all kinds of natural disasters. These panels have been used for 50 years, and there's no documented effect the panels have ever had a negative impact on safety. Not this kind of panel. They're the kind that we're talking about use of crystalline silicon panels, which are made out of the three most common elements on the planet, which is aluminum, oxygen, and silicon. There's nothing there to cause any concern. I heard you talking about the vegetative abatement. I don't know for 100% sure, but most likely the person doing the maintenance there will probably use some type of herbicide around the fence and around the posts, the piles that are driven into the ground. They will mow the vast majority of it. Sometimes they'll either weed eat it or put, I'm not going to say, I've seen it both ways, but as a farmer, the application rate, the concentration is the same, but the application rate per acre would be less than 10% of what would be used if it was soybeans or Roundup Ready corn. I mean, it's a much lower application rate. There will be no harsh pesticides, insecticides, fungicides, nemicides. They're not interested in killing any kind of insect or worms, or that's not what they're trying to do. They're not putting any nitrogen fertilizers on it, so there will be no runoff into creeks that would be typical for a farming operation with row crops. That's not going to be there. There's going to be no smell. You're not going to be able to smell it. And let's see. After construction, the typical traffic load would be similar or actually less than what one household would be if you had just put one house out there. So you were talking about trips per week, not trips per day. So it would be, after construction, there would be no impact on that traffic. So I've covered most of the points. There are 100 other points. So you can find anything on the internet. I'd be glad to answer any other questions, but I'm not going to waste any more of your time. But I would love to answer any questions you might have. Any questions, Chris?
You said that they're just made out of aluminum, oxygen, and silicon?
Yes.
That's the total deal of what they're made out of?
I would say that's 99.99%. There is a little bit of metal that's used for solder that it's got copper, on the panels, and then the solder to hold the connections together. But that's a very, very small. That's like 7 grams per panel. It could be silver solder, it could be lead solder, it could be any. I don't know what kind of solder they would use. But these panels will pass what's called the toxic characteristic leach procedure. That's an EPA test that has to be run. They grind these panels up. They subject them to some very harsh chemicals trying to dissolve them. And if they pass that test, nothing in it leaches out. Then they pass that test, and it can be put in a landfill. Far too valuable to ever put one in a landfill, but it's safe to put in a landfill, just a plastic landfill, non-hazardous waste landfill. Thank you for your time.
Before we move on, I just do want to ask, I want to ask that the board accept Mr. Sandifer as an expert, if that's, they consider him an expert in that field. Thank you.
Have you been sworn in?
I have.
Read this to you. Please state for the record your name, company, and address. Also, please state the topics that you will discuss and provide your professional qualifications and experience that qualify you as an expert in this matter.
Yes, my name is Nick Kirkland with Kirkland Appraisals. I am here to speak about property value impacts for the proposed development. My address is 9408 Northfield Court, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm a state certified general appraiser in North Carolina and 7 other states. I've been appraising for a decade. I'm in the process of receiving or working towards getting the MAI designation through the Appraisal Institute. I'm a candidate designation there. I've been accepted as an expert in property value impacts before boards like this at the town level, the county level, and in states where they do it at the state level as an expert in property value impacts. Would you like me to continue?
Sure.
Okay. So for this proposed project, what we've been asked to do is to determine whether or not there would be an impact to the adjoining or nearby property values. So in order to determine whether there would be an impact, we do what's called a matched pair or paired sales analysis, and also a sale resale analysis. These are 2 different ways to look at whether or not there would be an impact to adjoining or nearby property values. The first, the matched pair or paired sale, involves comparing a property that is sold directly adjacent to an existing solar facility. This is very similar if you've ever gotten your house appraised or your land appraised, where they look for 3 to 5 similar nearby pieces of property to your property, and they say after adjustments for slight differences in size or year built, we think your property is worth this amount. Essentially, in a matched pair, all we're doing is saying, hey, there's a property that's sold next to an existing solar facility. Several nearby properties, when using them as comparables, indicate that the property next to the solar facility should have sold for about this much. And then the question is, did it sell for more, less, or about the same? That's the matched pair or paired sale analysis. The second is a sale resale. This is where we look at a property that sold next to vacant land before a solar facility was ever built. Then after a solar facility was built on that property, that house sold again. And we use the Federal Housing Finance Agency Housing Price Index, which is a national database that tracks appreciation and depreciation of home values by submarkets, put together by the federal government, and look at, okay, after the solar facility was built, did it sell for less than you would expect? Or did it sell for about the same or more? We've got over 100 of these examples combined between these 2. And in each case, we're reaching out to the brokers involved with the adjoining sales and asking, was there an impact? If so, what impact do you think that had? In many cases, the brokers offer their comments of there could be an impact, they weren't sure, or in many cases, at least the most common thing we hear is, we think that there might be an impact, however, for this sale, there was no impact. We have looked at data specifically as local as Davidson County, trying to find examples of either of these methods here in the county, and then have stretched out beyond that. We found one example within Davidson County. In the impact study, it's shown on pages 35 to 40, but the example from Davidson County is on page 37. And this shows no significant impact to the adjoining property values. And I'd like to take a second and just explain if a property value impact
I think that this one works pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, is that better? So when looking at whether or not an impact would occur on a property, it's important to look at, if an impact were there, why would it be there? In other words, what would be the cause or the externality or the characteristic that would cause the impact to the neighboring properties? And there are several externalities that are typical in real estate, and some are positive and some are negative. The most common, going from most impactful to least, are hazardous materials, though you've heard testimony that there won't be any of those present here. Odor is obviously a very big concern for neighbors of property. There's no specific odor associated with a solar facility that would impact a neighbor. As far as traffic, after construction, this is not a traffic generating use and would not be a significant impact to neighbors' property values. Noise is another one that often comes up, and again, after construction, this is a very quiet use that will not have noise beyond the property lines. The final two are appearance and stigma, and this is most often where, if an impact were to occur, it occurs for solar facilities. And primarily it's due to the appearance of the facility. Oftentimes it's going on rural land or land that has formerly been farmed, and many of the adjoining neighbors are accustomed to that visual appearance that it currently has. And so when an impact occurs, and there are some times where a solar facility could cause an impact, it is most often in this category. And a lot of the older solar facilities in the state that had very minimal vegetative buffers or setbacks from the neighboring dwellings were often were the properties that saw the negative impacts. This is why over the last decade there's been a big shift in why vegetative buffers, as was previously mentioned by the Mayor Pro Tem, of 6 feet are required. That's not always been the case for solar facilities. For the proposed South Davidson solar project, there is significant vegetative buffers and setbacks in order to protect the neighbor's property values. When looking at the solar facilities that we found data from, the most comparable ones are shown on page 78 in the impact study, and these show a range of impacts from negative 10% for being next to the solar facility to positive 10%, but they have an overall average and median of positive 2%. So there are some examples that show a potential negative, some that show a potential positive, but most examples show no impact, positive or negative. Additionally, we've reached out to over 200 tax assessors across, I believe, 8 states or 10 states at this point, including talking to one of the tax assessors here in Davidson County and asking them, have you adjusted the adjoining property values next to solar up or down? If so, what evidence have you seen that the solar facility was impacting or not impacting property values? All the responses we've got, not a single one, including in Davidson County, impact or changes the adjoining property values for being next to a solar facility. Davidson County was not one of the counties that indicated this, but some indicated they would be spending a lot more resources trying to look for data to support either a positive or negative. But currently, 200 plus tax assessors have all indicated that there's no change to adjoining property values that they've implemented for being next to a solar facility. Additionally, there are several university studies that have been done that look at this from a different lens, not from an appraisal lens. And the most recent of these is the Loyola University study. This was done and published just last year. It focuses on the Midwest and looks at property values within the same zip code as the solar projects and compares that to a random zip code adjoining that solar project and tracks whether or not the land within the solar county's zip code was appreciating or depreciating compared to the random nearby zip code. What they found is that there is no significant impact to adjoining or nearby property values across that zip code, and they actually found that what they say is a potential mild positive of 0.5% to 2% positive for being within the same zip code as the solar facility compared to a randomized zip code adjoining that. That being said, the overall conclusion of the study was that there was no significant impact to adjoining property values, positive or negative. And briefly, I'd like to just discuss the University of Berkeley, or the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab Study. That was one that came out in, I believe it was 2023, and it has looked at more solar facilities than any other university study. It looked at, I believe, well over 1,000 solar facilities. And within that, they have a wide variety of potential impacts from some states showing, I believe, up to -6%, and their overall average and median being -1.5%. But the trick with this study and a difficulty in using this study is that the most important factor, as I previously mentioned, is the appearance. How does it look? What's the setback from the neighbors? what's that buffer look like? They don't address that at all in the study. When we've reached out and spoken to actually the author of the Loyola University study, they indicated that at a university level, it's very difficult to look at that because you don't get to walk through each of the neighbors' backyards and see how those vegetative buffers differ, and it's very difficult to quantify. And so a majority of the Berkeley's study, where they looked at 1,000 solar farms, is looking at older solar facilities, which, as I previously mentioned, had less strict vegetative buffer requirements, less strict setbacks, and also were generally a lot smaller. About 95% of those are smaller than what's proposed right here. And I'm not talking the entire solar facility, including the county portion, but just the portion within Denton. Most of the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab examples are from something about half this size. Additionally, the way that the study actually worked is they looked at property values within 1 mile of solar facilities and compared those to property values 2 to 4 miles away and tracked whether or not the properties closest to the solar facility were appreciating or depreciating faster compared to the land further away. The main issue with this is that most solar facilities are located a couple miles from small municipalities. Most of them are not located this close to within a municipality. Oftentimes they're found in the county a couple miles from a municipality. And so what this study has effectively captured is that the most rural land in counties is appreciating slower than land that incorporates commercial and other uses. There's a number of other issues with these studies, such as they attribute all impacts due to property value to the solar facility specifically. On pages 27 through 29 within the impact study, we have some photos that show some of the examples that they point out as their examples of what they looked at. In that, you can see that there's industrial buildings, multi-story office uses, and other similar higher intensity uses between the solar facility and the closest homes, and they attribute all the potential impact to the solar facility and ignore all the other uses. So with this, it's very difficult to use this in a vacuum, but looking at all of the university studies, they range in general from that -6% to a mild positive of +2%, but are generally within ±5%, which within real estate is considered no significant impact due to real estate being an imperfect market. In my professional opinion, the proposed solar facility will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. I know that's a lot of information pretty quick. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about what we do, how we do it, or anything that I said.
In your chart on page 33, here you have all the different solar farms identified in Davidson and adjoining counties. I noticed that the one on South Davidson, that the total acres is just about the largest one. And if we're comparing to others, and megawatt use, megawatt output is a whole lot higher than most of all of these.
Yeah, so
Why would it not be?
That's the one. So what this chart is, this is identifying the solar facilities that we've researched just from Davidson and the adjoining counties. We've researched plenty of much larger solar facilities, and let me point to the page on that. Page 84 shows the solar facilities where we've pulled matched pairs from, and they're all in that much larger range. Some of them are over 100 megawatts. For instance, on page 84, number 27 there across is 200 megawatts, which is significantly larger. We've looked at ones over 600 megawatts. It's not that size is not an important factor to consider. It's just that we've looked at that, and the chart on page 33 is more just to show the local data that we've looked at, rather than the largest ones we've looked at. And that's shown on that page 84.
Direct me again, I just now found page 84.
Sure. If you look where it says average, median, high, low in the bottom middle, in bold, it's at the bottom of the chart.
Yeah.
If you go directly to the right, the next numbers, it says 597 and down. the column right next to that is the megawatts that for that data set. So they range from 19.6 up to 617. The average is 75, which is very similar to the proposed entire Davidson solar here at 80.
And also, it looked like when I was going through all the documentation, it looked like almost all the buffers were, anywhere from 185 to 400 and some feet. I didn't really see any that were as small of a buffer as what was.
Yeah, so there are definitely some examples that we have of projects that are within that 150 foot. I don't know specifically what page that is. I can look for that. But we have seen examples as close as about 110 feet from dwelling to adjoining property line, which is closer than the closest home for this proposed project. The distance that is here on average is several hundred feet away from the adjoining, from dwelling to adjoining parcel, from dwelling to the panel on the project. We have seen examples closer than what's proposed here, and typically the closer it is, the more stringent the buffer requirement is. And a 6 foot buffer going in is on the more stringent side from what we've seen, and many jurisdictions it's 3 feet that has to grow into 6 foot or 8 foot in some number of years.
Going back to page 33, am I reading the chart right, that the closest home on ours is actually 50 feet?
This is for a older iteration of this that we did not repaste the chart in for this. That is not for this project.
This is AI generated?
No.
No?
No.
Feel like I'm getting bad information. This is an old chart, I need to see the new one.
The new chart would be the exact same, except that one line would be removed.
What one line? The closest home?
No, the 867, the one that says South Davidson, that was not supposed to be included on this chart. That just would be removed. That is all. The goal of this chart is to show the ones that we've looked at nearby, not show this specific project. The idea is to show how the nearby ones compare to what's proposed here.
But is that correct?
No, that's why that would have to be removed. But only that one line is incorrect.
But the total number of acres is correct, right? 575 acres.
Yes.
And the output's correct, 80.
Yes.
When you were going top, do you remember tried MLS?
I'm not, no.
So how did you get your dollars?
We go on the GIS, we look at all the solar facilities in the county, and we click on all of the adjoining properties looking for sales.
And on the appraisal, how many of these in the city limits?
Of Denton?
No, anywhere.
I do not know how many off the top of my head are within city limits. Yeah, I do not know how many off the top of my head. It is not uncommon for solar projects to be within a city's limits, but I don't know that we have any matched pairs or sale resale within this impact study that have that broken out on like a page where I can explain that.
Yeah, is there one anywhere in, that you have knowledge of states anywhere that is in city or
Yeah,
city limits?
yeah, they are built within city limits. What we're trying to do though is find sales of properties that are next to them, and the ones that are normally within city limits tend to be like this, where they're a lot smaller than the overall 80 megawatts. And so there's just, if the property next door has not sold, there's no analysis that we can do. We can only do analysis if the property next to it is sold.
I failed to ask if you would mind stating that you are
Yes, I am an expert in this.
And for clarification, you guys can state that you accept him as an expert, you accept his testimony. So you can state that for the record as well.
I accept him as expert, but I don't know where I stepped off with his testimony.
Regard to the witness status as an expert, if any party is standing, have any questions or evidence.
I don't know what to do, man.
We cannot.
With regard to the witness status as an expert, do any parties withstanding have any questions or opposing evidence or any objections at this time?
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor, I don't know, did you do that same question for Mr. Sanford about his qualifications? I did not. Would you like to address that now as well? Sure.
I would just need for you to state that you are in fact, consider yourself an expert in your field.
I do consider myself an expert in the health and safety for solar protection.
And I would need to ask this board if they would accept your testimony as such.
So be allowed one statement of that.
Okay.
Could you accept?
I move to accept, man. Is that what you want?
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
In my professional opinion, this project, if constructed the way it's
Could you
designed.
give the microphone back to him, please?
Pardon me. In my professional opinion, if this project is constructed the way it's planned, it will not materially endanger the health and safety of the citizens of Denton or the surrounding districts.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions at this time for Nick? If not, would you call your next witness?
Did you guys accept Nick as an expert as well? We accepted both of them.
Yes.
Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. We have other experts available to testify to specific subject matter. If anyone has any questions about anything that hasn't come up yet, that would include water runoff issues, environmental issues, construction issues, anything like that. If there's any specific questions along those lines, we have folks available who are knowledgeable and are professionals in those areas to testify to that. But since many of those things don't necessarily speak directly to the four findings of fact that are required here, we have not gone ahead and affirmatively put them forward. But if there are any questions that anyone is sitting on related to any of that, we do have folks here available to discuss. All right. So again, my name is Ben Hinsey. I'm the attorney representing the applicant here today. You've heard.
So sorry.
is an expert in this area, that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted and approved. You heard Mr. Harrison Cole testify as to the specifics of the site design and that the use meets all required conditions and specifications of the permit. You heard Mr. Kirkland, who's accepted as an expert appraiser, testify that the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. You heard from Mr. Cole's testimony that the North Carolina Utilities Commission has found that this use is in fact a public necessity, which satisfies the alternate finding of that prong. And likewise, you've heard from Mr. Cole that the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of the town and its environs. I would ask that the board consider all the presentations, handouts, reports, application materials, anything that's been submitted, cited, or referred to so far. Accept that, consider it part of the record here today. I want to make sure that that's all in the record. It is my contention that the applicant has presented competent, substantial, and material evidence that all required standards of this ordinance have met, and they are entitled to the issue of the permit. I would ask that you all issue that permit, and I'm sure we'll have something to say after we hear from the opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Other parties withstanding testimony and argument. Standing determination of conditions good for that. Okay. This time, am I correct in saying?
Mayor,
Yes.
I need to ask Mr. Cole one question.
Sure.
The power, just out of curiosity, the power that's generated, where is it going?
It'll go directly into Duke's grid, and then Duke will distribute it to wherever the electricity is.
So it could potentially stay here.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
What
so,
did you say? I was asking where the electricity that's generated would go, and he said it would go into the grid,
yeah,
and then
is this any better?
you'll repeat what you said.
Yep, so what I was saying is that the electricity generated at this project will be transmitted directly into Duke Energy's grid, and then from there, Duke directs where the power needs to go. So it could stay locally here in Davidson County, it could go to Yadkin County, it could go wherever the need is. We have no direction over that.
Thank you.
Question for the attorney. All the opposing witnesses have previously been sworn in, so we can just go ahead and start
You can call them
with the
from
witnesses. Okay. Karen Biscayne, please come forward and address the board, please. Thank you.
Is this a little better? Karen Biscayne, our residents are at 7348 Farmer Denton Road in Denton, North Carolina. I'm also a property holder at Highway 109 and 49, which is a scenic byway. I had previously been sworn in. And in standing, because of that scenic byway, this solar panel farm would impact the scenic byway all the way to the Denton Farm Park. One of those is that it could impact several thousands of people that are coming into town with the appearance of a solar panel as they drive by. We have several events that are held at the Denton Farm Park. Also, one of the items is that it could impact who comes to the Denton Farm Park now because of the lack of, not wanting to go by all of these. One of the things that the property that we own at 109 and 49 is a proposed highway commercial on the scenic byway, which I have, when we purchased that property, has to be built in compliance with a appealing area. The hotel that we proposed would be like a 2-level. So all of that, we have to comply with that. Our buffers, even our trees and things we have there cannot be cut down. Sheets has looked at that property. And so as we're looking at that property, it also, the solar farm would impact what would happen as much as there and traveling the scenic byway. So as an expert, as in owning property on a scenic byway, this would also impact going to the farm park as a scenic byway. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Mayor, you'll let the applicant ask the questions if they would like.
Absolutely.
Ms. Visco?
Yes.
Ms. Visco, which road is the scenic byway?
It travels from from Ashboro, Highway 49, travels onto 109, and goes to Highway 47, and then it also goes out to Highway 8. And the Denton Farm Park is within 4 miles of the solar farm. So thousands of people come through Denton that will take where the restaurants are in Denton at Highway 47 and 109, they will travel right by where all of these panels are.
Do you have any knowledge whether this specific property that we're talking about today is on the scenic byway?
Yes, and it's also within 4 miles of the historical site.
Are you aware of any development restrictions that have this property here?
Well, like, one of the things that would impact, our town lost a huge business, Burlington Industries, and seeing a solar farm come in that doesn't generate income for our town or the surrounding in the county is very detrimental to us. We lost a tremendous amount of jobs at that point. The scenic byway is just one of the avenues that the Denton Farm Park, with it being historical, and you gotta travel by these panels going to the Denton Farm Park, is not very appealing to thousands and thousands of people that come into the area. July 4th, there's several thousands of people that will come through. And to think that they come to this town because of its quiet farmland, their trees, all of the corn or the soybeans and things that happen here with farmland, now they've got to look at a solar panel as they go by. And so a scenic byway, they wouldn't have put the scenic byway in or had it there if it had not been an appealing environment.
Let me ask the same question.
If I may, we also have an expert here that looked at the historical data who can talk about it in further detail than I can. So if there is questions, we do have Matt here who's available to speak to the historic preservation, all the work that we've done for those.
Let me ask my question to you a different way. Would it surprise you to learn that there are not development restrictions related to scenic byway or historical sites that impact this specific property that we're talking about today?
I do know that I got a letter, I got information when we purchased it and turned that into highway commercial, that our buildings and what we built and the trees we cut had to be appealing to the eye. You cannot put up a hotel that was not, it can be 2 or 3 or 4 stories high. It has to be a 1 level and that type of thing.
But you're talking about your parcel, not this parcel.
Exactly, but when you're coming down Highway 109, that's the scenic byway. And then you're within 4 miles of an historical site.
If I may, I believe the property that we're talking about today in the town of Denton's jurisdiction does not does not adjoin one another. So I just
No,
want
you have to turn off of 109 to get, yeah, that's the road, Highway 47 is what they take to get to the farm park.
sorry, that was more, I just wanted to make sure I was
Yeah.
understanding. So, all right, I'm just waiting for question.
Mayor, I could do a point of clarification. Highway 47 is also Bonnie Road, so just so that you know that's where she's mentioning.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This time I'd like to call Valerie Adams to the floor, please.
Good evening. I'm Mallory Adams. It was previously determined to have standing. I reside at 217 Forest Park Drive. Were there any other preliminary matters that I needed to
Have you been
address?
sworn in?
I was sworn in at the last hearing. I just wanted to point out a couple things that, couple points that I feel goes to the burden that the petitioner has to provide competent material and substantial evidence. The economic impact report, which was previously testified about, on page 16 of that report, it indicates that no capital equipment will be purchased from vendors in Davidson County. So to say that the building or the construction is gonna put money into the town is just not accurate. It also talks about one full-time employee, so it's not creating substantial jobs for Davidson County or for Denton. When you look at the tax impact, $1 million over 40 years, if my math is correct, that's about $25,000 a year. That's not even enough for the town to purchase one vehicle that would be needed. We had asked repeatedly for some environmental information. The mayor in the meeting agenda that came out on February 3rd, 2025 said that the information would be forthcoming, and I know that it was asked about at the last hearing, and we were told that it was not required. Just because it's not required doesn't mean the town doesn't have the right to ask for it. And so I think that it is concerning that we haven't heard about that. Also, if you look at the decommissioning, someone asked about the decommissioning rates. On the expert opinion report from Chris Sandifer, page 1 of 4 and page 2, also says that the cost estimates are current and that they're estimated using present day rates and not future escalation considerations. So if the town does in fact approve the special use permit, one thing we would ask to consider is asking that the bond increase and be based on those future estimates. Also, if you look at the study from Nick Kirkland, we don't oppose him as an expert witness. He certainly has the education and qualifications. But the report that he provided is dated May 2022, so it's 3 years old. We don't have current information. We would contend, I would contend as a property owner, that this is not in harmony with the area that it would be located. The other portion that Davidson County approved is more along commercial lines next to Tractor Supply, which is an existing business. But this particular part butts up against houses and against residential. And for that reason, we don't believe that it is in harmony with the area. It certainly could be taken out of the property. They can still have the solar farm, but it keeps it out of the residential area. So that's what we're asking. Is there any questions?
Yeah, we do have the environmental report available that Matt, our expert witness, is able to talk about that report and answer any questions that so.
We asked for it last time. I think the mayor had asked for it. And I would just say that they have the burden of proving all the evidence, so I think it's a little disconcerting to just come up and say, well, it's here if you want it. When it has, that should be on them to provide. Thank you.
Ms. Adams, if I may ask a quick question. You and I have spoken a number of times since the prior hearing.
Correct.
When we spoke at any of those occasions, did you ask me for any reports or information from the applicants?
We asked for discovery, and all the information at the prior hearing, we're told that everything was with the town. So we've done the Freedom of Information reports and asked for all of that. I specifically asked for the economic report last time, and you said that it was not required.
Okay, so, yes, things that the town had would be subject to a public.
Correct.
But did you ask me for anything?
I filed a motion and asked for discovery and was told by your senior counsel that that wasn't something to do with these sorts of hearings. So yes, I did ask. I mean, we offered to exchange discovery, witness lists, everything.
But subsequent to that motion at the prior hearing, did you ask me for instance?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, and I'm about to ask Chris, if I can say that, you know, it's concerning the cost estimate on the removal of the solar farm. You know, I originally asked a question. It's at today's rate.
That's correct. I'll take a snapshot for the date that I did it.
Whose burden would it be to pay that to remove it?
Say again?
Whose burden will that be financially to remove the solar farm?
It could fall three ways. It's gonna fall on the owner of the facility. That's who it's gonna fall on. But they're gonna be responsible to, the town, they'll be responsible to the landowner. And that's gonna be covered by, an independent bond. That's 125% of what an independent engineer estimated, somebody with experience.
But that bond is for now.
I understand that, but it's 125%, and in 5 years, it has to be re-evaluated. And after 5 years, it has to be re-evaluated. Nobody's trying to predict what the price will be in 20 years. I don't think that's reasonable, so.
So you're telling me it's not necessary to do that now?
I'm saying, this, by statute, it has to be updated every 5 years.
Okay.
By statute, the owner of this facility will have to report to the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality and have to give them a report every 5 years of what the decommissioning price was and make sure that the bond covers it. So I don't do that. I don't try to escalate. I don't try to guess what inflation rates are at. But 25% hopefully will cover you for 5 years and they'll redo it, and then probably another 25% cover you for another 5 years. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. That answer your question?
That sounds a lot better.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have questions for Adjournment, I guess, to you about the scenic byway that, so how many, solar farms have y'all, like, pretty good along the scenic byway? Have y'all done scenic byway?
I am personally not knowledgeable of any of those, but there may be one. I would just be speculating if I was to answer that, but you know, given that the scenic byway is a DOT measure, you know, we would have to comply with any kind of DOT requirements whenever we're working with them for any kind of future permit. So if there is any kind of restrictions with the scenic byway, then you know, we'd be happy to include that as a condition of a condition for this permit, that we have to follow all requirements for the scenic byway.
Dana Evans, please come forward. How are you?
Okay, as good as I can be. Dana Evans, I am one of the property owners of 572 Bombay Road, Denton. To my knowledge, it may be the only two-story house that is adjoining the solar farm area. For those of you not familiar with it, it is adjacent property to the old Burlington Mills, 2 stories, as I said, and we have a full view of the entire farmland that this is going to be on in the city limits. I have documentation for each of you to look at, if I may. This includes some photos that will be relevant.
probably meet that.
Yes.
I attended the zoning meeting on January 16th. Public discussion was not allowed at that time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to the other zoning committee meetings before that. I was very disappointed to not be able to speak. The farm special use permit was passed with conditions. It is my understanding that the Board of Commissioners can add more conditions before the final vote. That is my goal today. I have listed several concerns for your review, some of which you guys might be able to speak to as well. So one of my main concerns is the additional water runoff. If you've ever driven by my family home place with rain, heavy rain, you would have seen some major flooding in that area coming off of the field. It is additional water runoff and water erosion is a common issue with solar farms. Please see the current photos of, or the photos of current runoff issues and the articles regarding the likelihood of increased stormwater runoff, as well as the best practices to mitigate. Page 2 of what I handed out is property tax overview of our property. And the next page, you will see pictures of some of the flooding that takes place. The January flooding that flooded downtown Denton, that was the same day. You can see the first photo is from the neighbor's house looking across, I call it our ditch, to the Bombay Road. And then the second photo underneath is looking from the neighbor's house across our backyard into the field, the said farmland where the solar farm will be placed. The next page is another January 4th, 2023 photo with the water running off of the field. You can see it in the background coming off. So you get a viewpoint there of what that looks like for our property. I have asked for, but have not seen site plans specifically for the water mitigation adjacent to our property. Harrison and I have had many conversations. I have shared with him these photos. I have shared videos, I do believe, showing the water runoff. He has acknowledged that concern, and he has said in emails that he would be willing to help mitigate. What I haven't seen is it in writing. And so I ask that the panel require them to help mitigate this water issue. As I said, several other pages have been given to talk about the erosion control and the without proper planning, large-scale solar installations can contribute to soil erosion, reducing land stability. Erosion control measures such as vegetation management and drainage systems help stabilize the site. So I'm just asking that we get in writing that they will be held accountable and be binding to help mitigate that. My other concern is the visibility, because we are a two-story home and we are directly impacted on this. From our upper level at 6 feet, that's going to do nothing to obstruct our view of the solar farm. The current site plan, the one that I last saw, I do believe, calls for 3 trees per 100 feet of buffer. Not enough for a complete barrier. We asked for additional taller trees along the property lines. We asked for the vegetative buffer and water mitigation measures to be installed first. And to my knowledge, I don't think a full sightline analysis has been done from our property standpoint to improve the vegetative buffer. In other words, I really don't want to look out our upstairs window and see the field of solar panels. So we're asking for increased vegetative buffer and taller vegetation. I know that he had said in an email that they would be willing to help do that. Once again, I want that in writing so that they, as a condition of this approval today. I had asked for addresses for other solar farms in North Carolina. Harrison, Precious, gave me a couple of addresses in Rowan County. So my husband and I traveled there. We were able to speak to some residents that were directly impacted by those solar farms. I took pictures while we were there. He also sent me some pictures of one that was further away that I wasn't able to go to myself. That was on, I believe, the last page. You can see the pictures. So one of the concerns that I saw were the vegetative buffer had died and it was basically not there. So part of my concern is holding them accountable in perpetuity to make sure that the trees live and get a chance to grow and block the view. And that if any do need to be replaced, that they're replaced with equivalent size trees. So the 6 foot needs to be replaced with 6 feet and so on. Once again, this needs to be in writing so that the town and the property owners understand the process and the timeline for those replacements. We're also concerned about the noise level. I know that has already been talked about. The neighbors that we spoke with in Rowan County said that is an issue for them as well, that they can hear the hum. I read in some of my research that I provided to you that there are such things as quiet transformers and quiet inverters. I don't know if those can be required to be in the city limits, but might be a consideration. The other thing is during heavy thunderstorms and lightning activity, if there are any power outages, and maybe you can address that. That was a concern at the other solar farm sites. My concern number 6 is the value of the property, and I know that has been discussed in great detail. What has not been discussed, not necessarily the value, but the appeal of the property. We are trying to sell the home place, and of the people that have come, we have disclosed the solar farm possibility, and that has been a concern, and that has been a hurdle to try to get over. So it's not necessarily whether it decreases the value, although it could. Some people may say, I don't want to live by a solar farm, and just not be interested in purchasing it at all. So I think that is a concern that can't be really addressed in dollar signs. So in conclusion, I would rather continue to see the beautiful farmland. I realize that there are worse uses for the property. I'm submitting the concerns in hopes that the site plan can be approved and updated in writing before final approval. Any questions? I know I've given you a lot of information to look at.
Harrison, do you have any questions?
Not necessarily a question, Ms. Evans. Thank you for, working with me on this as we continue this. And I just wanna, one of the issues that I know that we kind of started our relationship on is the runoff with the stormwater and whatnot. So, and in your opinion, it sounds like, you know, by your property is essentially the low point, I guess, or near that property line. So what I want to emphasize to you is that we do have a stormwater civil engineer here today, and we have looked at the report, and that is the exact area where we are saying that erosion and basins will need to be placed because that is the low point of the property. And so we are completely aligned on that point, and you know that's the best engineering practices. So I just want to make that a point that is something we took very seriously, and we worked with our stormwater engineer, and that is how the project will be designed because that's what is the best engineering practice.
Once again, I know that's what you said.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen the plan in place, and I know when you presented the plan earlier today, you talked about you've already, you know, made provision for some areas that are, you know, still have the trees, and you've told me that you would leave the current taller trees that are there. Most of them are already on our property. There are a few probably on the farmland.
And if I may, what we would be willing to do is, because all these permits obviously have to go through CPEQ in order to get approved and whatnot, so we would make sure that is a condition of this permit, that anything, that it has to be approved by DEQ, the permitting process, and again, you know, they look for best engineering practices and making sure that, you know, they look at the flow of the land, and obviously, as we've seen in the photos that we provided, this is the low point, this is where the water flows, and so we're more than willing to enter into a condition saying that, you know, we will seek DEQ approval, and, you know, more than happy to continue to work.
And in the future, you know, if we
Yes.
do see that, you know, maybe what you did isn't quite good enough,
You've got
that
my
you're willing to come back.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Any questions?
I apologize in advance, I do not mean to antagonize you at all. I do want to object to the inclusion or consideration of the various news articles that are attached to this packet.
That's merely to support the water runoff.
I understand why you included it, I just want to object as it's hearsay, it's, you know, articles from somewhere else, and we can't question the people that wrote it or submitted this information, so I want to object that, I would object to your considering that information. I certainly have no objection to your inclusion of the photographs we take. Thank you.
A point of clarification, this objection is valid as far as the rules of evidence go.
With this in mind, can we hear from the stormwater person?
You absolutely can.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You need to rule on his objection.
Okay.
Just one second.
So if you either make objections or the rule of objection.
Objection, okay.
My name is Jackie Graham. I'm a professional engineer registered in the state of North Carolina. I was sworn in at the last meeting.
Okay, that was the next question. So you consider yourself an expert?
I am a hydrology expert and stormwater design expert.
Do you want to accept?
Okay. I work for ANS Geo, which is a full-service engineering company, headquarters in Columbus and 444 South Front Street, Columbus, Ohio. I personally work remote in North Carolina and Nashville, and I worked as a civil engineer in North Carolina for 7 years. I'm registered in North Carolina. So I can attest that the current development plan complies with all land use regulations. The entire solar development project is considered low impact development with respect to hydrologic response. The amount of impervious built upon area is much less than the maximum requirement of the water supply for watershed. Although the water supply watershed regulation only applies to a portion of the project in Davidson County, the entire project is compliant with those strict development rules. This project is in a FEMA flood zone X, which is an area of minimal flood hazard. I conducted a hydrology study to demonstrate that the project will have no significant impact on flood depth. It will not increase the flood stage. During construction, the project will be subject to construction general permit by, for erosion control by NCDEQ. The runoff velocity that I modeled for the 100-year, 24-hour storm, which is like a high level of standard, the runoff velocity will be non-erosive, given a standard vegetated coverage, which is required by NCDEQ. Stormwater runoff attenuation is not required by the city or the county. However, under the guidance from Cypress Creek to minimize impacts, I am recommending that permanent stormwater controls in 3 areas where there are residential neighbors next to the project be installed. On Bombay Road, northwest of the project, on Golden Street, west of the project, and on Astron Drive, also on the west side of the project. These stormwater controls will improve the drainage conditions of the neighborhoods. Any questions?
What are the controls? Just a ditch?
Well, it's gonna vary, for, per final design, but I'm thinking that, for Miss Evans, what I would like to see is a ditch with a, French drain that leads towards the NCDOT right away. And given that there's such a wide landscape buffer, there's going to be plenty of room to outfall it prior to the DOT right-of-way in that direction. So I don't think, and I haven't done the final design, that there will be a permit required to discharge into the DOT ditch. I think we'll be able to outfall it prior to the DOT right-of-way, and so it'll travel there in overland flow.
Any questions? Sorry. Any other votes have a question for her at this time?
Why is there not a final design at this point?
Because we don't have zoning approval. Once we get to the point where we know that we can construct, then we do design for permitting.
And to further that, we have different design stages for projects, and so traditionally when we're doing things in-house, we consider that about a 10% design, so we're taking the overall area, putting equipment on where we think it'll go, and then as the project progresses through the life cycle, getting survey and other matters and things of those natures, the environmental reports as well, we progress it to different design stages. And so essentially we're going from up to a 30% design with an external EPC who will eventually, who is the engineering partner of this project. And they will be furthering the design to make sure that it's compliant with everything that we've laid out here today, but also with more statewide permits as well.
I think I had it written down and I'm not sure I actually said it out loud. Is there a way to do the vegetative buffer and the redirection, water mitigation before you start construction of the solar farm itself?
Yes, I think we'd be willing to insert into that, especially the vegetative buffer. The civil work will be done, ahead of the installation of the equipment. So that's not an issue, but for this area, we would enter into a condition that the vegetative plants need to be planted before the full, the equipment starts to be brought to the site.
So there are, all of the erosion control measures are required to be installed prior to any soil disturbing activity. And what I'm recommending is that in addition to erosion control measures in those three areas, which is also adjacent to your house, that we go a step further and put in permanent stormwater control measures. So that is a natural first step of the development plan, or the construction plan.
Any further questions for this witness at this time? Thank you very much. Call Eddie Futrell.
I'm sorry, did you accept her as an expert?
No, I didn't. Did I? Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Good evening, my name is Addie Futrell. I live at 254 Forest Park Drive. I was previously sworn in, and quite frankly, I would rather have a root canal than be here tonight doing this. But I felt like it's the right thing to do, and so here we go. Is there any more information you need from me before I dive in? We were advised to retain an attorney, but quite frankly, we live in a well-established yet modest neighborhood and do not have the resources to hire legal counsel, nor do we have experts in our employ. We will have data and documents to support our position, and so do they. They have experience since 2014 in defending and promoting their business. We are just trying to protect our homes and our families. But please remember, just because they say their data is valid and refutes ours does not make it more credible. I would like to note that in the article from January 10th, 2024, Charlotte building massive solar farm to power city buildings from WCNC, the site states, and I quote, "The city of Charlotte is paying to have a massive solar farm built in Davidson County. This week, leaders approved a contract for the South Davidson Solar Project as part of their strategic energy action plan. Next fall, construction will start on the 537-acre solar farm in Denton, North Carolina, which will create clean energy for the Queen City. Davidson County leaders approved the solar farm in 2022. County planners told WCNC Charlotte that they were not aware that the energy provided by Duke Energy would go to Charlotte. In addition, Fox 8 News states in the December 16th, 2024 report, Davidson County approves moratorium over concerns. In December 2024, the Davidson County Commissioners passed a 2-year moratorium on new solar farm construction. The Davidson County Commissioners decided they needed more information, so any new plans for solar expansion in the county are stalled for up to 2 years. On April 28, 2025, Stokes County Commissioners denied the request to rezone parcels of land for a solar project. One of the commissioners opposing the project argued that the project would sully the natural beauty of Stokes County and did deviate from the county's long-range development plans. As we have heard, there are 4 criteria by which the special use permit will be approved or denied that include ambiguous and subjective terms. Criterion 3, The use will not substantially injure the value of the adjoining or abutting property, or the use is a public necessity. So what does substantially injure the value mean? What is an acceptable amount to decrease the value of our property? There are many studies that address solar power plants and property values. Some say there is no impact or positive impact, and some say property values are negatively affected. Most say the impact depends on the proximity of the solar panels to homes and what you can see, and that impact can be from 0 to 30%. From Inside Climate News, do solar farms lower property values? A new study has some answers. I quote, "The research from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory helps refute some of the assertions of solar opponents who stoke resistance to projects with talk of huge drops in property values. But it also drives a hole through the argument made by people in the solar industry who say there is no clear connection between solar and a drop in values." The authors analyzed 1.8 million home sales near solar farms in 6 states and found diminished property values in Minnesota, 4%, North Carolina, 5.8%, and New Jersey, 5.6%, end quote. In the study titled "Shedding Light on Large-Scale Solar Impacts, an analysis of property values and proximity to photovoltaics across 6 U.S. states," that's where this information comes from. So a $300,000 home could potentially see a $17,000 reduction in property value. To the modest property owner, that is substantial. In the study from the University of Rhode Island, URI researcher, housing prices decline within a mile of solar energy arrays. It states, a study of the impact of utility-scale solar power installations on nearby housing prices by University of Rhode Island economists found that house prices within a mile of a Rhode Island or Massachusetts solar array declined by an average of 1.7%. Homes within a tenth of a mile of the installation declined by 7%. And we're talking about homes that are abutting this project. With this percent, a $300,000 home could see an impact of $21,000. Again, substantial. In the article, Solar's Impact on Rural Property Values from the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers, the article states, Haldeman's takeaway was that properties immediately adjacent to a solar farm may see a negative impact, but tactics to hide the solar farm from view could help offset those effects. It could help offset the negative impact, but it's not going to completely remove it. Dr. Herbert Eckerlin, who is a retired NC State professor who designed and built the solar house at NC State, reports in the article, Solar Farm Speaker, Be Aware of Hidden Agendas, that Mary Clay, an Appraisal Institute member appraiser in Paris, Kentucky, has conducted a multi-state property value research project and has found that solar farms reduce the value of neighboring properties as much as 15 to 30%. And we contacted Dr. Eckerlin, and he was trying to get his schedule opened up, but he was unable to be with us tonight. What is measured in these studies is the reduction in proceeds from home sales due to the proximity of a solar plant compared to homes not near solar plants. What is not measured or not reported is what the real estate industry terms buy resistance, or the number of potential home buyers that reject the properties completely because of the proximity to a solar project, even at a reduced price. So, historically, what are the 3 most important things in real estate? Location, location, location. If property on a golf course or waterfront or water view, there is an increase in property value, then property value can also be negatively impacted by location, location, location of thousands of solar panels adjacent to a residence. The article, What is a safe distance to live from a solar farm refers to the solar heat island effect. From the U.S. Light Energy website, I quote, "As solar arrays absorb and convert large amounts of sunlight into electricity, they radiate heat. Large-scale solar farms can raise the local temperature. This phenomenon is known as the solar heat island effect. If you are sensitive to heat, you may be more comfortable lengthening the distance between your home and the solar farm." I wish we had that option. When a solar panel is 30% efficient, that means the panel can convert 30% of the sunlight hitting the panel into usable energy. What happens to the other 70% of the light hitting the panel? Some is reflected and some is lost as heat. The sunlight dissipates as heat, essentially warms up the panel and the surrounding environment. This heat is transferred into the air all around the panel through convection and can also radiate outward from the panel's surface. The panels used in this project are 26 to 27% efficient when newly installed, as stated by the CCR engineer at the open house meeting on March 11th. Criterion 4, the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of the town and its environs. The subjective question here is, how does Denton define the standard in harmony with the area and in conformity with the plan of development? What is the plan of development of the town, and how is a solar plant in conformity with that plan? The area of the town of Denton is 1.98 square miles, about 1,267 acres. The area of the proposed solar power plant, Parcel 24, is approximately 131 acres. That's a little over 10% of the total area of the town of Denton. Is that our plan? The CCR plan for a vegetative buffer is commendable, and it's over and above what is required. With their plan to plant a combination of mature 6-foot trees, shrubs, and grasses. But due to the topography of the parcel that is much higher in some locations than state roads that border it, the panels will not be hidden from view. So what does harmony with the area and its environs in the town of Denton look like? I've read Mr. Kirkland's report on the impact of the solar plant on property values. I strongly disagree with his assessment, as do some of the researchers I cited, but I am not an expert on appraising property values. He also included his opinion on the zero impact of this solar project on the harmony of the area. But he does not have a stake in our town. He does not watch his kids or grandkids play at Bombi Park or attend events at Harrison Park. He does not visit the Christmas train at the farm park. He does not shop at our local businesses. He has not sat at the communal table at the village. His relatives' names and faces don't appear on flags at Harrison Park on Memorial Day. Those things represent the harmony and the environs of Denton. He has no vested interest in our town. He has no history here. He is not an expert on the harmony of the town of Denton. I am. And the residents here are. And these commissioners are. There is a home on Bombi Road that will be affected by this project that was built in 1919. It's 106 years old. Are solar panels in harmony with that historic home? Even the Department of North Carolina, Department of Transportation wasn't impressed enough with the harmony of Denton to designate the Uwharrie Scenic Road, which goes from Ashford to Charlotte on Highway 49, and the only deviation from that is the extension that comes up Highway 109 to Denton. That's the only time it goes off 49. It's to come to Denton. The first two entries on the points of interest on the Uwharrie Scenic Road are the Denton Farm Park and the well-preserved historic buildings in the town of Denton. I googled Denton NC, and this is the result. Denton NC is known for its historical significance as a railroad town, its southern charm and welcoming atmosphere, and its family-friendly environment with spacious homes and proximity to farmland. It also hosts the Southeast Old Threshers Reunion at Denton Farm Park, which features the largest display of antique farm gasoline steam equipment in the southeastern United States. I wonder how that description will change next year. Thank you.
Eddie,
Oh, question?
any questions for Eddie?
I've got a couple questions. Yeah, and I was hoping just to clarify, because Commissioner Bean, I think it's what you were asking about earlier about the electricity. So the way that this agreement works is, and I should have clarified when I was giving my testimony, so I apologize for that. But the way that it works is that, again, the electricity that is generated by this facility will go directly to Duke Energy's grid. And then again, that is distributed for how Duke Energy sees fit and where they need it. That is still true. What is also true is that we have entered into an agreement with City of Charlotte and Duke in order to help pay for the energy. So essentially, what we call a trilateral agreement. Essentially, what Charlotte is getting is the environmental attributes from this project, what we call RECs, Renewable Energy Certificates. And so what they're doing is they're paying additional money for the energy that is produced by this facility. And then that agreement is also included Duke Energy as well. So that is all public. That's what's referenced in the article we provided. But the electricity that's generated is still going to Duke Energy's grid, right where the interconnection will be. And then Duke distributes it to where it needs to go. We don't have any say in that. That is completely up to Duke Energy. So I just wanted to provide that point of clarification.
Stated differently, they don't somehow box up the electricity produced in Denton and ship it to Charlotte and only use it in Charlotte. It's essentially an accounting trick used by the city of Charlotte.
We call it a virtual PPA because the actual electrons produced here are not being shipped to Charlotte. Those are still going to Duke Energy's grid and then they distribute it. This is different than what you would consider behind the meter, so like a residential system where it's going directly to offset your energy usage. That is not what's happening. So I just want to make that clarification for everyone.
Eddie, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think he has a question.
Yeah, so you are not licensed appraiser or anything of that nature?
And I stated I was not an expert.
Do you have any particular engineering background or knowledge?
I do not.
Design of any of this?
But I am a researcher. I have 2 master's degrees.
Okay, what are those in?
Administration and counseling. I'm an educator.
I would like to object firstly to all the materials that were provided as hearsay. Those are third-party articles, people who prepared those articles, and people with knowledge of those articles are not here to testify. So we object to that as hearsay. We also object to any testimony that was based on those items as inadmissible hearsay as well. It should not be considered. And we would further object to any testimony regarding the design of the site, health and safety impacts, impact of value of real property, stemming from that testimony.
That wasn't a question for me, so may I ask? Do y'all have any questions for me?
So any objections? I understand that he's making the objection based on hearsay. However, their report also contains citations to data. Learned treatises and news articles are admissible. It's up to you as a finder of fact to determine if they're reliable and what weight to give them. Obviously, if it's a National Enquirer article, you give it no weight. If it's a news article from a reputable source, you can give it more weight. You can certainly ask expert witnesses about statements in learned treatises. You can certainly cite to them, and you can use evidence from learned treatises, from other studies, to cross-examine. We're not really doing typical cross-examination here, but to attempt to impeach expert witnesses. So certainly they can cite to all their data points and other articles, other studies, other figures and data. Certainly we can as well.
So I would respond to that, that we have expert witnesses who prepare their own reports that include citations and materials that are subject to cross-examination. You can ask them about it. Someone printing out a news article from the internet and handing it up without the ability to explain it or testify to why it is or is not true is not proper, not how that works. So we can object this hearsay.
Stand.
If I may, I'm Mike Fox, I'm one of the attorneys representing the solar farm. I'd like to address the.
Have you been sworn in?
I have not, I'd be happy to, although do you normally swear attorneys in?
Attorneys will know this.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to address, there's been some discussion about the scenic byways. I would note that the North Carolina Administrative Code, creates the rules for what are scenic byways and what are not, and it's ultimately decided by the Department of Transportation. And I would note that that code allows for certain commercial applications along scenic byways. It does not disqualify it as a scenic byway if you have commercial applications. I could tell you there would be very few scenic byways in North Carolina if you eliminated them because there was any sort of commercial application, because there's almost always a convenience store or some old, or some, commercial building in virtually anything that you have. So I want to share that with the board.
Thank you. Anyone else? Call the next witness. Jeffrey Russell.
He's not here.
Not here? Okay. Archie Bell.
This is just a few hours on the internet, what you can find out. It was easy for Charlotte Mecklenburg taxpayers to be coerced and coerced into funding a project on the guise of reducing their carbon footprint, not ours. And not having any solar farms in their backyard. So they said the taxpayers are funding a corporation, Cypress Creek Renewables, the farm surrounding the town of Denton. The Davidson County Board granted the entry Cypress Creek Renewables, who is owned by EQT, one of the largest suppliers of natural gas in the United States, to proceed with their proposal under the assumption that the power generated by these aforementioned solar farms would be available to Davidson County residents, but found out later that they were not the case. Duke Energy is selling the electricity to Charlotte Mecklenburg taxpayers. The main question is CCR invested their corporate funds into the project and Duke Energy invested in the project? Is there any other government besides Charlotte Mecklenburg subsidizing this project? Notice there's been a Davidson County received a lesser property tax income. These projects are taxed at a lesser rate than other industrial projects. It really didn't. Davidson County subsidizing the Charlotte residents' power supply merely by deception. Also very important, what does the Soil and Water Conservation have to say about the water shed from these solar projects? Where they done. Another concern is vegetation around these projects. Are they gonna put sheep in there to keep them mowed down, or are they gonna use some Monsanto's spray to kill the thing? What's that gonna do to the water supply then? And the shrubs they got around for a buffer, they don't want them over 6 foot tall because that'll block the sun. So think about the health of the people in Denton. I bought this property, I think in '98 or sometime, for my company. I was gonna move it to Denton, and probably would have. But I looked at what I had to move, and I just couldn't see at my age doing it. And I'm almost 85 years old, so anyway, think about people then. That's who you.
Okay, hold on. Archie,
Yes.
you may have a question from the board
Okay.
before you This time the party may call any additional witnesses.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to do environmental impact.
Okay. Can we hear from them?
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Matt Huddleston. I represent Copperhead Environmental Consulting Incorporated. We're an environmental contractor to Cypress Creek. I was sworn in last time. Yes, sir. And
Are you consider yourself an expert in your field?
I do. I hold
Can you tell us your qualifications?
yes, sir. I hold a biology degree, master's degree, and bachelor's degree in biology from Eastern Kentucky University. I hold a PhD in environmental toxicology from Clemson University.
Is this board willing to accept him as an expert witness? Okay.
Thank you. So I'll speak to the two primary laws that Copperhead, our company, helps companies like CCR adhere to, and those are the Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act. So under those laws, we'll start with water. We'll first evaluate what's considered jurisdictional, or waters of the U.S. or waters of the state occur on the development site. So where are the streams, where are the wetlands, and we'll first map those. We'll do a desktop survey, map those, understand where they are, and then we'll come out and we'll physically assess them. And what we're assessing is whether or not they're permanent waters. Are they streams that flow all the time? Are they wetlands that are, you know, wetlands are determined based on the type of soil, type of plants that grow there, and the amount of time the water is associated with those wetlands. And so we'll evaluate all those properties, all those conditions, I should say, and determine what we believe are what I call, will be referred to as jurisdictional waters, or waters of the state, or waters of the U.S. Then we prepare a report on where those are. Cypress Creek will then make their determination on, can we avoid them, or are there going to be any impacts to those waters? In other words, do we have to drive over a stream? Can we offset or keep the solar panels, a certain amount of distance away from those waters? All those things reduce the environmental impact or reduce the impact on those waters. Then after we finish our report, we turn that report into the Army Corps of Engineers. And the Corps of Engineers is the agency that's responsible for providing a permit for Cypress Creek to conduct their project. So that's the water part. And we visited with the Corps, came out, and so we've done it. We've done all the assessment. We've done the report. We've applied for the permit with the Corps of Engineers, and the Corps came out with us, I believe in January. I believe it was shortly after our last meeting, and they concurred with our assessment. So that's the water part. The endangered species part, where we start there is, again, we'll go to, the state has a natural heritage database where they list any endangered or threatened state species and whether or not they occur in the development area, or what proximity they might occur to the development area. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has a database that does the same thing. So we'll access those databases and some others and determine what has the potential to be here. We know that what showed up on the federal list were 2 or 3 aquatic mussel species, a plant, a monarch butterfly, and the tricolored bat have the potential to be here. And so then what we'll do is we'll come out and we'll physically do a habitat assessment. We'll assess the area and if those species exist, if we see them, or see evidence of them, or see what's considered critical habitat for those species, we'll document that. And then that report then goes to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they issue what they call a letter of concurrence. And what we determined was that those species don't exist, we didn't find them, we didn't find critical habitat, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service concurred with our findings. So that covers the water and any protected species.
So it's already
Any
been
questions?
done, it's already been assessed, but there's nothing there, like the mussels or what you talked about,
That-
indicated or the.
That's correct. That's correct.
I'm sorry, I didn't hand these out. Would you like me to?
Yeah, sorry.
Jump right in.
And did you assess anything on water runoff after solar panels were built?
The runoff part is not directly associated with the laws that I just mentioned. That's more of a civil limits and design part.
And I guess your assessment was of the whole property, up to Washington County, the city too?
Correct.
Do we have any questions for Matt at this time?
Yeah, I guess as long as the creek run through there, the civil engineers are already civil engineers back in the day, along Old Neck and runs through that pond. You know, the spring that runs through there.
Yes, I believe so. I believe that's the name of it.
So how will it affect that?
No, because like I said, the permanent streams will be avoided. That impact will be avoided.
How large of an area, how far back from those streams will?
I was just about to answer that, yeah. Yeah, so what we do is, because we know that construction is an imperfect, construction is an imperfect, opportunity. So what we do is we assign at least a 30-foot risk management buffer along each side of the stream, so that, there's, in order to ensure that there's no kind of, equipment going through that or anything of that nature. So across any kind of blue line stream, what we're referring to as a jurisdictional stream, we employ this risk management buffer so that we ensure that there's no kind of, no activity going along in that area.
And you said how many feet?
30 feet, and it's not a requirement. This is an internal buffer that we do because we recognize that things can go awry.
You're welcome.
I have a question for him.
No questions, Mayor.
Question. Oh, okay. Yes, Karen.
Yes, this is one of the studies that we had requested back before, about the water and the vegetation and any of the wildlife. Where is this report at? I have not found that. You said you've done a report, so where is that study?
So this study that we provided, we're happy to give you a copy of it. This is just a summary of all the work that Matt mentioned. We've been working on this since 2022, around that time frame. And so this is a combination of everything coming together, and that's what we have. We're more than happy to provide you a copy of it, but essentially what this shows is exactly what Matt said, in that there's no impacts to these, to both the threatened and endangered species, and then also the waters of the U.S., as they're called. Again, this is something that we talked about at the meetings. We just now have this kind of summary together, but all this work has been done for many times now, and we just want to put it in kind of a more individualized, I guess.
Yeah, and I would add to that people keep using the phrase environmental report. There's not like a thing that exists that's a environmental report, right?
Yeah, unless something
not until somebody like Matt sits down and types up a summary of everything he's done. It's not a report, it's just a guy that's complied with laws.
And that was partly our confusion at the last hearing, or maybe the time before that, forgive me, but what we've been asked for is an environmental report. That, there's no such thing as an environmental report. We have these different sort of things, like Matt described, that all kind of go into the environmental aspect of a project. And so that's where, when we asked for clarification, what are you asking for? Because we've talked about, these things in these hearings before, but we weren't sure what additional information we could give, because we just heard that it was an environmental report. And if that's my misunderstanding, I apologize, and we'll get you all this information so that you can look over it and take a look at it. We're more than happy to continue to work with you.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask my question again. You're the expert biologist. Where is the data and the information that you've stated where you have come out and looked at the property in question? Where is that study that you've done that has the creeks, the water, the wildlife that will be impacted, Tom's Creek, all of that? Where is that information that you just testified to for us tonight? We've been 60 days out and we have not seen anything that type of information. Whether you want to call it environmental or not, but where is that information for all of us to be able to see?
These are reports that we commission, and so these, what we want to be careful of is, making sure that anyone, like the landowners that we're working with, are comfortable sharing that. And so that's why we have this report right here. And so these are internal reports that we commission. We also have worked through the North County Utilities Commission that also looks at threatened endangered species. They look at the historical properties as well. And again, they would not approve a project that has not gone through that process with the different state agencies, and all that information is publicly available. Again, we were confused with the wording, and again, we're more than happy to provide this information, but this is not, the requirements of this report are not needed for this type of permit.
Yeah, that's correct. I understand the interest in this information. It's not really relevant to the four factors that are being discussed for the special use permit here today.
So you're saying that this is not a factor, but yet you have to get permits for Cypress Creek in order to construct?
Yeah, there's a lot of permits that go into the solar.
I understand that.
The permit we're here today for is a special use permit, where we're asking this board to find that 4 specific factors are met in order to allow somebody to go forward under the zoning ordinance. There are compliance issues with federal governments, with state governments, with various other governments. It's the whole cascading series of permits that don't have anything to do with what's going on here today.
Okay, but if this was to go forward, how is your information about the creeks and how the buffers are gonna be, how is that not relevant to making a decision or for anyone else of us to understand what would occur? If that has to be permitted, why is that not a part of your expertise? Why would that not be coming forward?
Probably the maybe a good analogy is like when you build a house. Like if you have a piece of property and you want to zone it to build a single family house, there are certain things you look at, like is it appropriate for the area, etc. But you don't have the electrical plans, the detailed electrical plans for your home, because you may not even have finished designing your home yet. And so that's sort of the analogy here, is that this is really kind of step one in any kind of approval process. From here, there are a number of regulatory agencies that have to sign off on this, that have to approve it, and so a lot of these things are required, but they're not required exactly up front, if that helps.
It does some, but when we have requested that information like you were testifying to, that's what we're trying to get. What species, what creeks, how are you gonna handle that forward? We've not had any of that information, and that's what I'm asking you. If you're testifying to that, and you already know that information, why are we not getting that information?
It hasn't been put in a final form yet to do that. So not like there's one, as Harrison said, there's not like there's one comprehensive report that covers all things environmental. It might cover 2 or 3 things, like how the stormwater runoff works, or whether or not there's endangered species, et cetera. So it's not all together in one place.
I understand that. But if you're forthcoming with information, that would help us understand information that is coming that y'all are looking at. That's all I'm trying, with the expert, he gets up there and testifies. All I'm asking is, where is the information that you've learned already? Where is that information? That's all I'm asking.
And if I'm, again, we're trying to be as transparent as we can, so I'm gonna be candid. At the last hearing, when we were all here in February, I believe, you know, we were all talking, and you know, that obviously there was the motion to continue, which is why we're here now. Because there was it sounded like there was gonna be opposing counsel that could potentially be at this meeting, we felt like it was in our best interest to work through our legal counsel and to make any kind of request through them. So if the town had any additional request, we would direct it to our legal counsel, and then we'd answer and work with them to get the answer back. And so, you know, because of that, and again, I'm trying to be as candid as with you as possible, like about how this has kind of occurred. And it was because of that. We wanted to make sure that, you know, we're not misspeaking, because we want to make sure that, you know, we're, again, being as transparent as possible, but also giving you all the correct information. And so that's transparently what occurred, you know, over the last 60 days. And so again, now that we're here, we have these reports, and we're more than happy to share with you. But again, it was because we, as the applicant, myself as well, felt that I could be under, you know, some kind of additional scrutiny, and I wanted to protect myself because of that, and that's why we, you know, wanted to work through our counsel, because there was a chance that opposing counsel could be there. And so that's the full story. That's why, and I'm trying to be as transparent as possible, and we're more than happy to provide anyone in this room with a report and show that about the summary that Matt's provided.
Well, I object to his, because we don't have the information that you said that you provide. I mean, I don't.
There's nothing objecting to the expert's testimony.
Any party with the standing that would like to offer a rebuttal at this time? Absolutely nothing. Okay. Deliberation. Does the board have any more questions for the parties or witnesses before we move into deliberation?
Yes, I have a few about the bonds. So you said 5-year bonds, correct?
Yeah, sorry. We're talking about a decommission bond.
Yes, the decommission bonds. What are these bonds going to be rated?
The bonds are typically through, it's typically rated, the minimum that we've done in the past, I believe, was think it was AAA minus. That's AAA plus.
Yeah. Will this be the only solar farm covered under that bond?
Yes, sir.
If your company defaults or you decide to sell the solar farm, what happens with that bond?
So the bond will stay with the project, and so I like to think of it as like kind of similar to like a foreclosure of a house. So if for some reason our company goes bankrupt, the project's still there, you know, either a bank will come in and assume the project because we'll have, you know, debt to build the project in order for that. So either the bank will come in and assume it, or if, and that's explicitly why we have decommissioning bonds, is because if our company goes bankrupt or whatever, the project's still there, we don't want the decommissioning aspect of it to fall, one, on the landowner, and then two, the town account. And so that's kind of like, I like to say folks are protected in two ways. One, with all of our site control agreements with landowners, it includes a legal language in there that we must decommission the site. And then two, the bond. So it's kind of, I like to say, you know, especially landowners are protected in two ways, but that would also count for the town.
Okay, and on the assessment of the decommissioning costs in 5 years, are you gonna reassess the decommissioning cost, and then 125% of that will be your new principal?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's regulated by DEQ. This was a House bill that went through last year, that got passed by the governor, and we were proponents of it because, you know, we've been around, as you heard, since 2014, but some other companies haven't. And so we wanted to have the responsibility for any solar developer, for any existing site, any future site. We have to have a decommissioning bond, either through the state, DEQ will manage it, or through the town account.
That's all I have.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Go ahead, Scott. Anyone else?
How much of this property, the Bourbon property, as we call it, is a percentage of your whole project here?
I'd say about, I'm gonna estimate here.
Sure.
I would say between 10 and 15%, because our total acreage is about 470 around that of actual equipment. And then this parcel, I believe, if I remember my slides correctly, is roughly 47 acres of the equipment. So, I'd say between 10 and 15%.
And your others already been approved?
Yes, sir.
And when will you start on that?
So this would all be one project.
Okay.
So it'd all be at the same time, more or less. I mean, it'll depend on when we start to work on our construction agreement and things like, you know, this area might start first and then they move over to this area or something like that. So we don't have that exact figured out, but it would all be constructed as one facility.
But I assume if we don't approve this, then you're gonna go ahead and build the other two?
The one in the county land?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I mean, that's more than likely, yes.
And is that yours on the platform also?
Yes, sir.
And when's it gonna start?
Same timeline. So we are looking at a construction commencement by the end of the year.
Okay.
And, Clarksburg and Church Road, was that one of y'all's too?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Any more questions? Does any board member have a personal knowledge or additional facts relevant to this case that should be entered into the record? Hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the board will now begin deliberation. The evidentiary hearing remains open so that the board may ask clarifying questions if needed. As a reminder, this board is tasked with deciding if, based on the evidence presented, this proposal meets the applicable standards. This decision cannot be based on the personal preference of the board members. Rather, it is based on standards and evidence. Board members are encouraged to reference the applicable standards and specific evidence in their deliberation. For this particular case, the board is asked to decide, does the record include competent, relevant, and substantial evidence that, number one, the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located for proposed and developed. 2, the use meets all required conditions and specifications of the permit. 3, the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. And 4, the location and character of the use will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located, and in general conformity with the plan of development of the town and its endeavor. This time, motion and vote.
Yeah, can I ask the attorney a question?
Sir?
If either party, if it don't go their way, what's their next remedy?
They can appeal to the Davidson County Superior Court.
So there is another step if he wants to.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to do these in order, Mr. Mayor?
I just gotta repeat that.
Do you want to do these in order, or how you want to do these findings of fact?
You know,
Okay.
I have a question before we start this. If there's additional requirements that we want to do we do that before or after this?
So you can do the findings of fact, and if you have conditions that must be predicated on something in your finding of fact. So in other words, you can't say, I just want blue flowers planted. It has to be, as we said, relevant, related to this, and relevant to these findings of fact. So when you're voting on the findings of fact, if there is additional conditions that need to be in place to meet these things, then you can actually state that as well.
question number 1. The use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located or proposed and developed. We'll go down the list, down the road. You have a choice, you either approve with conditions, or deny.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that number 1 would meet the criteria, according to the expert witnesses, that they won't endanger the health and public welfare of the citizens.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor, say aye. And do I need to continue?
Are there any nays? Were there any nays?
No.
Okay.
Would I need to continue these?
Yes.
Each month, even though we're at okay. The use meets all required conditions and specifications of the permit.
Mr. Mayor, I would say that number 2 does meet, because it is in the special use permit, it does meet.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor, say aye. No nays. That motion carries. The use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity.
Mr. Mayor, standard 3, I would like to say that, that if approved, that I think the buffer zone needs to be, increased based on the testimony, that was given, on the, property, the one that talked about the properties. Almost everything without exclusion, was anywhere between, most were at least 200 feet. And so I would like to add an additional condition where we, make the buffer 200 feet as opposed to 100.
If I may, we'd be happy to increase the buffer, if it works with the Board of Commissioners and the Mayor. We'd be happy to do the 150 foot, across all the property lines, as in addition to that area that we talked about where the existing tree lines are. We'd be acceptable of doing 150 foot separation.
Mayor, I'd like to enter into some discussion on that.
Okay.
I don't think it's a public necessity, even though they say it is, I think it is for our people. Solar is all over the place, and it's not necessarily a public necessity here. I do take issue with the property values, because none that he could cite were within the city limits. And being a realtor, I don't know how it would affect, but I think property values with none being in the city limits is a problem. So I would be against, I don't think number 3 meets the criteria.
And there's a motion. Can you repeat that motion again?
As the motion stands right now, it's, to increase the buffer to 200 feet, but otherwise approve that as a standard.
Any further discussion on this? If not, all in favor say aye.
I'll leave you a second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Point of clarification.
Exactly. Is there a second? If there's not a second, that motion will be dead. There's no second, so that motion is dead.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that number 3 does not meet the criteria due to property values and the expert witness not having substantial evidence inside city limits. And I don't think it's public necessity here.
I'll second it.
Second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The location and character of the use will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of the town and its endeavors. Vote to approve with condition or deny the standard.
I don't think that the location and character of the use is in harmony with the area in which is located in the general conform. I don't think it's part of our plan of development of the town.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second? No second, that motion will be dead.
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Staff will draft and will sign a final written decision to reflect the vote and reasoning for this decision. That written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to such notice. Parties have 30 days to appeal this decision.
And Mayor, just for clarification, you voted on the findings of fact, so I need a formal motion that says this is either approving or denying their special use permit based on these findings of fact.
And that would be at the time.
We need a formal motion. It needs to be a separate motion.
That would be from a board member.
Correct.
I'm sorry.
We need a motion.
Need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, having finding the negative on item 3 and item 4, I think this board has to deny the application.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. I'll repeat this one. Staff will draft and sign a final written decision to reflect the vote and reasoning for this decision. That written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to 6 notice. Parties have 30 days to appeal the decision. And I would do the motion and a second to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Good return, man.
Okay.
Good return.